Whether you like it or not, we're all here in Trump's world. Some like it rather less so. It's a regular feature on the program, looking at what's going on deep inside DC. Now, we can talk this afternoon to Sahil Lavingia, who worked for the Department of Government Efficiency as a senior advisor. Welcome to you, Sahil.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Now, look, you joined Doge. Tell me, because you admired Elon Musk, you were no great admirer at the same time of Donald Trump, I read. So it wasn't necessarily for you an ideological mission.
Not exactly. And efficiency, I think, is like a relatively apolitical term, right? I wanted to join and to work for the federal government and to ship software as a software engineer for the federal government. I just felt like the amount of impact one could have with that skill set is kind of unmatched, right? To be able to do that at that level.
Right, and about your experiences there, I mean, it's right, you found Doge more interested in perhaps serving an ideological mission than making lives better. Is that a fair summary? If that's the case, tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's entirely fair. I mean, I think at the end of the day, Doge was created by Trump. We all worked for Trump, and so when push comes to shove, the sort of ideological mission wins. But I think everyone there was more excited about shipping software, actually just making the services that the government provides better. Not necessarily even shrinking the size of government, but
Yeah.
actually like hiring software engineers and increasing the competency and the sort of state capacity of the government, such that we wouldn't have to rely on as many third-party contractors, vendors, to provide essential services to Americans and other people.
And you were at the Department of Veterans Affairs, weren't you? And I think I read that you have said you found that, well, that aspect of government, it worked better than you might have expected before joining this project.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people who work in tech, there's a lot of bloat in tech. The stock prices are really high. That gives investors and leadership a lot of leeway to sort of overhire, and you're sort of seeing a pullback from that. Post COVID, quite a lot of layoffs recently, and we sort of expected to see a similar story at the government. We didn't really see that. What we saw at the government was that actually government is sort of as small as it can be relative to the mission that Congress has asked it to serve. Right, the jobs are not created by leadership based on the sort of S&P 500 multiples, but basically because Congress has asked for a job to be created and appropriated the funds. So while there is some waste, I'm not saying there is no waste, no fraud, et cetera. It wasn't as sort of the wins did not come easy, right? It's a lot of hard work to make the government more efficient, and it requires like hard decisions. It's not sort of like, oh, there's a bunch of people over here that don't do anything, uh, which made our lives a little bit trickier.
Yeah, and well, it's a big part of the stated mission of Doge to deal with abuse and fraud. There is, of course, abuse and fraud, but you find there are ways of dealing with that inside the system as it was, and they are being significantly dealt with.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the government, it's full of people who think about these problems, right, all the time. For decades, the Government Accountability Office, each agency has this internally. Like agencies are constantly trying to make sure that we're not giving away taxpayer dollars to people who don't deserve it. So actually, there's a large effort behind that. And I wish Doge sort of had spent more time
Hmm.
accelerating those efforts and working with the people instead of sort of coming in as sort of more of like a hostile takeover or like a private equity buyout.
Hmm.
I think that would have helped. I think
Well, yeah,
have more of a positive impact.
but that is not the way the tale is told when supporters of Donald Trump and the administration tell the tale of Doge. They do, don't they? Insist that they're finding vast amounts of fraud and abuse.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that like during the State of the Union, right, there were a lot of stories around specific examples that were like for sort of very wasteful but very small. I think there are a lot of examples of like very wasteful but very small. And then there's like sort of like big, but then turns out not to be wasteful. Like the idea, sort of the golden goose, like the idea that there's a lot of big waste is sort of it doesn't really manifest. So like a lot of the, for example, social sort of dead people receiving Social Security, for example,
Hmm.
while there was like an issue in the database that showed like a lot of sort of like people above the age of 120, in theory would qualify for Social Security. Like when you actually like sort of investigated it, and we did, of course. There turns out there was not large scale fraud at that level, and it's unfortunate that the administration like didn't come out and clarify that, like, hey, by the way, we said this, and it turns out it's we investigated it, and it turned out not to be the case. We were sort of just moved past that to
Right.
the
Okay. Well,
next sort of flashy object.
right. Well, you describe that as unfortunate that the government isn't discussing and describing the work of Doge in the way that you've found it. That does rather suggest that the Doge is serving a political, ideological cause more than the cause of making government work better, more efficiently to the benefit of people.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I think at the end of the day, this is like sort of an unfortunate part of American government is that you're not sort of, it's not a parliamentary system that sort of has like a little bit more continuity, right, per like election. Instead, what you have is like it sort of swings left and right and left and right, and sort of like the primary mandate of like the new party is to sort of like fire all the old people and bring in all the new. The problem is if you do that every 2 to 4 years. It's hard to get anything like really impactful long term done, right? Like there's a lot of sort of not wanting to. No, imagine you're working on a project that's only going to ship when the next administration comes in. Like the sort of the desire to do that and hand do 90% of the work for them. That's the credit to be taken by the next party. There's it's not really people aren't super mindful about making the U.S. federal government more efficient at the executive level. The executive level is all political appointees, right? Actually, where you see that is in the career employees, the deep state, quote unquote, which are the people who are there, who plan on being there until they retire, who really care about the specific mission of each agency, and those are the people who are actually working to make these things better, faster, more efficient.
And I think, Sahil, you believe that Doge just isn't as powerful as it's made out to be, that it's often blamed by its critics for taking decisions which are not taken by Doge, which are taken by the people who are being put in, by the administration, just people in charge of different agencies and parts of government.
I think that's true. I mean, I think, if you think about like a private company will hire a consulting firm, right? The consulting firm will tell them to make some hard decisions, and then they'll execute on them. And it allows the sort of the boss to tell his workers, hey, I'm not firing you because I want to. I'm firing you because like that's like what these sort of outside third party sort of Ivy League educated consultants have told us to do. And I think it's sort of similar in which at the end of the day, the decisions made are the decisions of the Trump administration and the cabinet secretaries appointed by Trump.
Yes.
And if they didn't make those decisions, guess what? They would find a new cabinet secretary, right?
Right.
The people maybe executing those decisions, like logging into laptops and like hitting delete on certain things, may be Doge. They may be sort of they are providing the labor in order to like build the house, but the people who are deciding to build or tear down the house are the administration. They're the people who, frankly, like Americans elected, right? Like that is the choice that Americans made for better or worse.
Yeah. So you went into Doge considering yourself a fan of Elon Musk. Are you still a fan of Elon Musk?
I mean, I think it's undeniable that he's like a phenomenal capitalist. I think his skills of being a great socialist, which is like just a different kind of job, different set of incentives, different kinds of people you're working with. I think he's less good at that. It's very hard to find someone who's amazing at one thing and also amazing at another thing. He's very good at making electric cars and going to space, and less so, good at politics and running a federal government that is not motivated by sort of like capitalistic incentives.
Right. Look, he's set up or is setting up a new political party, the America Party. Does that seem to you a good idea?
I mean, I'm a fan of the free market. So if that's what people want, like the success of the success will define if it's worth doing or not. I think at the end of the day, it's his money, it's his time. Like he's able to do that if he wants. And I personally, I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't think it's going to work. I just think that the sort of the way that the first past the post system is set up in America, like doesn't really allow for two parties. But if he thinks he has some interesting sort of insight that will make it work, where in the past it hasn't worked, then I'm happy to follow along and if it works, great. I think more competition for Republicans and Democrats, just like more competition for Apple and Google, like leads to better products for customers. And that's sort of the goal that we all share here.
All right, Sahil, good to talk to you. Thank you. Sahil Lavingia there, formerly of the Department of Government Efficiency.